Welcome to the Tom Sense Show. We have got a massive hour ahead of us, from corporate boardrooms panicking over election integrity to the radical left trying to blow up the Supreme Court because they cannot win an honest vote. Quick reminder for everyone watching in the stream. This broadcast takes your questions right now as things happen. Drop a real question in the chat on YouTube at any point during the hour, and if it is worth talking about, I will take it right there in the middle of the news. We skip the spam, we answer the real stuff, and we give it to you straight. Let us get into the stories making waves across the country right now. The corporate boardroom hypocrites are sweating again this week, and it is glorious to watch. A new report from the Center for Political Accountability reveals that major American corporations are pouring millions back into conservative state political groups. We are talking about Target, Airbnb, DoorDash, and Zillow. Even big tech powerhouses like Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft have completely abandoned their post-January 6th pause. Google alone handed over $325,000 this cycle to the Republican Attorneys General Association. Naturally, the left-wing activist class is having a full-blown meltdown, shrieking that these companies are funding the destruction of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. But look at what actually happened here. A few years ago, every woke executive in Silicon Valley put on a public show, pledging allegiance to liberal causes and promising to starve Republicans of cash. Then the cameras turned off, reality set in, and these corporations realized they actually need elected officials who will not regulate them into bankruptcy. Now the left is crying foul because these companies refuse to set their own balance sheets on fire just to satisfy a handful of radical nonprofit groups. Corporate spokespeople are defending the donations as basic bipartisan advocacy for economic growth, which is public relations speak for admitting that woke posturing does not pay the quarterly dividend. It turns out corporate America loves progressive ideology right up until the moment it threatens the bottom line. Looking over at the YouTube chat, Shlomi Pearl 4946 is asking, what is the job of a judge? Well, Shlomi, the obvious answer that the left seems to forget every single day is simple. Read the law as written and apply it. Not make up new policy from the bench, because your preferred candidates could not win an election. Perfect. Back to it. Congressional Democrats are once again throwing a tantrum because they cannot control the United States Supreme Court. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and his liberal colleagues in the House confirmed on Monday that they are pushing hard for radical judicial overhauls ahead of the midterm elections. Their wish list includes 18-year term limits for justices and a heavy-handed, government-enforced ethics code. Why now? Because the conservative majority on the High Court keeps doing its actual job, upholding statutory text, expanding executive power, and trimming back the unconstitutional federal overreach the left spent 50 years building. Since Democrats cannot convince everyday voters to pass their agenda through normal legislation, they want to tear down the entire judicial branch instead. They cite public polling showing low approval ratings for the court, as if constitutional law is supposed to be a popularity contest run like a television game show. Conservative legal organizations and Republican lawmakers are rightly calling this what it is, an unconstitutional assault on an independent judiciary. For decades, when liberal activist judges were inventing new rights out of thin air, Democrats told us the court was sacred and untouchable. The second originalist judges start reading the United States Constitution as written, suddenly the whole institution is illegitimate and needs to be packed with political hacks. If Democrats spent half as much energy winning over ordinary American workers as they spend trying to rewrite the rules every time they lose, they might actually win a clean election. Looking at the YouTube chat, at ShlomoPearl4946 is asking why we even need a Supreme Court. We need one to follow the Constitution, not politicians. But look at Washington right now. The left loved the court when it handed down rulings they liked. The second the decisions stopped going their way, suddenly the whole institution is broken and they want 18-year term limits. You cannot demand an independent referee and then try to fire him the minute he calls a strike against your team. Right. Where was I? Over in Europe, the endless escalation machine keeps grinding forward on your dime. British Prime Minister Andy Burnham made his first official foreign trip since taking office, landing in Kyiv on Monday to mark Ukraine's 35th Independence Day. While standing beside Volodymyr Zelensky, the British Prime Minister announced that his government has formally authorized defense contractor MBDA to hand over classified technical data for the SCALP long-range cruise missile. That regulatory green light means France and Ukraine can start manufacturing these precision strike weapons directly on Ukrainian soil, dramatically ramping up Kyiv's domestic strike capabilities. European Council President Antonio Costa and a regional coalition of European leaders were right there backing the move, promising an unending supply of long-range hardware. Meanwhile, the Kremlin immediately pushed back, warning that setting up Western missile production lines inside Ukraine crosses red lines and directly expands the conflict. Here's the bottom line. European leaders love putting on high-profile diplomatic pageants and pledging limitless military manufacturing, all while expecting the American taxpayer to serve as the ultimate financial and military insurance policy. While Europe scrambles to sign industrial defense deals that drag the region deeper into permanent war, the America First position remains crystal clear. We need strong leadership that forces both sides to the negotiating table, stops the bleeding, and ends a destructive war that European politicians seem perfectly happy to prolong indefinitely. The United States Navy just sent a crystal clear message to the Chinese Communist Party, and Beijing is not happy about it. A United States Navy P-8A Poseidon maritime reconnaissance aircraft flew a complete mission through the Taiwan Strait on Friday, marking the first American surveillance flight through the international waterway in 5 months. The United States 7th Fleet confirmed the aircraft operated entirely within international airspace, monitoring maritime traffic between the East and South China Seas under standard freedom of navigation principles. Beijing immediately fired off angry diplomatic protests, claiming the flight violated their sovereignty and endangered regional stability. This bold move comes at a critical moment, as teams in Washington and Beijing finalize details for a high-stakes diplomatic summit between President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Communist Party officials want the world to believe they own international waters, and they especially wanted Washington to back down right before bilateral negotiations begin. Instead, American military leadership showed that we fly, sail, and operate anywhere international law allows without asking for Beijing's permission. Under weakness, adversaries push the boundary. Under strength, we remind them where the boundary is. President Trump understands how to deal with China from a position of absolute power, not diplomatic apology. The Chinese Communist Party can file all the angry paperwork they want, but the Taiwan Strait remains international airspace, and American strength is not going anywhere. The rogue regime in Tehran is watching its economy disintegrate in real time. On Monday, the Iranian Rial suffered a catastrophic collapse, plunging to a record low of 2.02 million Rials against a single United States dollar on the open market. While the state-controlled central bank in Tehran tries to pretend everything is fine with an official rate of 1.5 million, reality on the street tells a completely different story. Everyday Iranian citizens and local shop owners are dealing with hyperinflation and massive price spikes on food, medicine, and basic imported goods. What is causing the crash? A crippling shortage of foreign currency, coupled with severe shipping slowdowns through the Strait of Hormuz due to regional maritime instability, which has choked off the regime's vital export cash. Predictably, state officials in Tehran are blaming foreign psychological warfare instead of their own corrupt, terror-sponsoring incompetence. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei continues to funnel millions of dollars into regional proxy militias, funding hostility abroad while the people inside his own country cannot afford a loaf of bread. When you isolate yourself from the civilized world, threaten global energy routes, and build an entire economy on terror financing, the bill eventually comes due. Maximum pressure works, economic reality is completely unforgiving, and the regime in Tehran is running out of money, options, and excuses. Inside the Trump administration, a sharp debate has surfaced over federal health guidance as we approach the midterm elections. Health leadership and agency heads have been in active discussions regarding childhood vaccination recommendations and executive enforcement standards. On one side, grassroots health freedom groups and alternative health advocates are demanding aggressive administrative action to overhaul the federal immunization schedule and roll back recommended childhood shots. On the other side, pragmatic campaign strategists are urging administration officials to tread carefully, warning that sweeping federal changes to standard regimens like the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine could spook moderate suburban swing voters who are critical to holding Congress in November. This internal debate shows the difference between top-down bureaucratic mandates and a movement that actually wrestles with medical freedom. For years under liberal leadership, health agencies operated in total secrecy, silencing debate and firing anyone who asked basic questions about transparency. In a real America First administration, differing viewpoints are debated in the open. The goal is simple: deliver maximum transparency to parents who want informed consent, while keeping the political focus locked on dismantling the deep state and winning elections. When parents are empowered with honest data instead of federal intimidation, common sense wins every single time. That wraps up this hour of the Tom Sense Show. Keep your eyes open, stand tall for America, and I will see you right back here next time.